All right. People seem to not understand what liberty is about and what actual freedom is about. So let me break it down for you just real quick. And some of this is going to fly over you guys' heads in the event that you learned what liberty was and like libertarianism, what it was about from some Marxist, or you wrongfully assume that rights come from the fucking government. Okay. Now, the simple way to put this is look at it like this. All rights are property rights. That's probably blowing. What about the right to do this? Look at it like this. The term right has been used wrongfully by a lot of different people, which is why you have people say things like healthcare is a human right, right? It's a completely meaningless term at that point. So you look at the concept of like positive and negative rights, and why people talk about it in that context is that a right is something that does not require anything from someone else, right? So when you look at something like your right to live, right? To live, not to have someone else subsidize you so that you stay healthy. No, I'm saying it just exists. Of course, that is a natural right. That is a God-given right. But it all extends from private property rights. And this is why libertarians like myself of the more like Austrian school of economic thought look at it like that. And that all human rights are property rights, first starting with self-ownership. And that is you own yourself and your body, and nobody obviously has, let's say it would be an act of aggression in the event that they aggressed upon you. So when you look at something like what is violence, right, against someone, like positive, not literal positive violence, but a positive in the sense that nobody did anything to you and you just decided to go punch a motherfucker in the face or stab him, right? That's a violent bodily invasion. So if you look at it like that, you can start to see from which all rights extend from that. Don't look at property just in the sense of, well, I owned this tablet or something. Like, yeah, while that may be true, but it's because, well, I own my body. I own, therefore, obviously the labor. And let's say the labor got me money or whatever. And that money is something that it is that I owned. And then I exchanged it with whoever owned this tablet before. And they valued the money and they owned it. You know, they own the tablet. They created it, or they're a retailer or whatever. And then they exchanged it with me. I valued the tablet over the money. They valued the money over the tablet. Bam, voluntary exchange. But the only reason that is for to be considered righteous is because, again, we all own ourselves and therefore our own bodies. Now, when it comes to COVID, that concept obviously flies over people's head because the term what rights are and what liberty is has been completely it's flying over folks' heads. Like you have crackheads like over here at the ACLU, which was supposed to be kind of an organization that looked to protect these liberties. They're talking about COVIDs, and this is what they said. Far from compromising them, vaccine mandates actually further civil liberties. That makes no fucking sense. They protect the most vulnerable people with disabilities and fragile immune systems, children too young to be vaccinated, and communities of color. Oh, my God, they pulled that card. Hit hard by the disease. Right. So that's what the ACLU themselves are saying, because they act as if, well, requiring you to get a jab is therefore protecting someone else as if that's your job. Therefore, it advances civil liberties. This kind of goes along the lines of this idiot right here named Emmett McFarland. I don't know who this guy is. Oh, he's a professor. These are the knotheads that are political science, which isn't a real science, by the way. But this is some crackhead that you guys are dropping them off at to go learn from. And this is what Emmett McFarland's dumbass says. Vaccine mandates are freedom maximizing, rights enhancing, libertarian policies. That is an objectively false statement. I'm going to address it in its entirety, but starting there, that is an objectively false statement. And it says, and they should be communicated and explained as such. They prevent a small minority from limiting the freedom and violating the rights of the majority. That's the tweet. Okay, moron, I'm going to break this down to you. That's not how it works, and that's not a libertarian position. Not even close. right? Because what we're dealing with is someone injecting, and whether the vaccine mandate and what that or laws or whatever it is that you want to call them, it basically forces or rather coerces someone into injecting something into their body, whether they want it to or not. You either make it completely, and that's obviously if it comes from the government, that's when we call it an act of aggression. I'm not talking about someone on their own private property requiring their patrons or employees to be vaccinated. But when that pressure comes from the government, that's a completely different animal, because that's not, you're actually violating the private properties of private property right to the people that don't want to, let's say, do that. But this all goes because, well, the aggressor, so the state in this case, they have put these parameters, they've set them, right? Albeit as arbitrary as they are. And so they have said, okay, I am going to aggress upon you, right? Unless you do what it is that I want you to do. In this case, we're talking about getting a jab. So this is why I say it's textbook abusive behavior, because you get like an abuser, whether it be within a domestic violence case, child abuse, whatever it is, where they then the abuser tries to place the blame on the person that they're abusing. So they're beating them upside the head, basically screaming, why are you making me do this? I'm not. The abuser or the person that's being abused is not. They're not making you do any of that. You're doing that. And you could stop at any time, but you're choosing not to, because you have this like fraud humanitarian effort in which is being masked, or rather it's masking your authoritarianism, where, again, you want to force someone to inject something into their bodies that they don't otherwise want to. See, even with the vaccine, right, pertaining to COVID, that lie has to be retired anyway, because we know for a surefire fact, this isn't an opinion by any means, not just with the breakthrough cases. We know because of the existence of the breakthrough cases, even in the way that they are, where we covered. And in some pockets, you got upward of 20 to 40% of their cases being breakthroughs, right, of their hospitalizations. We already know that they can pass it around, right? We already know that they can pass it around. Like, it's not an opinion. We know that a person that got jabbed can still pass it around and get someone else sick. Maybe that person will have a severe reaction. Maybe they are immunocompromised. Maybe they are a part of this minority that is going to struggle with this. But guess what? The same thing can be said about a multitude of other things that don't have vaccines. I said this before. Viral pneumonia not associated with the flu has no cure. Don't take my word for anything. Look it up. It has no cure. Yet people die from it every single year. Have people been advocating for these sorts of mandates before? No. But you have a vaccine, which doesn't even act as a traditional one. It just acts as a symptom mitigator. You can still pass it. What the fuck are you talking about it being a libertarian policy? The act of aggression is the force or coercion on someone coming by way of the state to inject something into their body. That is an illibertarian, so non-libertarian position. It's not up for dispute. The fact that these authoritarian little shits try to appeal to freedom and liberty as a means to then force someone to get a jab is complete insanity. But it's classic abuser behavior, where they think they're the good guys. And they say, well, if you want me to stop beating on you, you gotta do what I want you to do. But so as long as you don't do that, I'm going to continue to beat you. You could stop. Nobody's making you do that. You could stop. We could go about our lives. The risk that's being assumed, the vaccine was even supposed to work in the way that you said that it should work. The only people assuming the risk are the people that decide not to get it. And by now, considering how available it is, we know that they don't want it. And that's their right to assume. Remind you, this is all something with a vaccine. This is a vaccine for someone with a 99% survival rate. Most people that get this are not going to die. Most people that get this are not going to be hospitalized, period. Are people going to die? Yeah. People die every day, B. for other things too, heart diseases and all these other things. By this crackhead ass logic, basically making mandatory exercise is a libertarian position. Making abolishing or rather elimination of all fast food restaurants is a libertarian position, because you're saving that person's life. Now, some people will look, well, that's different. It's an infectious disease. Well, we can look at cars. Cars kill people. People drive not drunk and kill people in their cars, getting in wrecks, all sorts of things. By this moronic logic, if we made cars not exist because we'd be saving one life, right? Because, hey, math, right? You stop having people drive, then there'd be less wrecks, meaning less wrecks and deaths. But this is a risk that we assume, right? People get sick. It's a part of human interaction that we pass various amounts of bacteria and viruses among each other, most of which don't get us sick, some of which will. You can pass something to someone you probably had, never knew it, and that got passed down to some 85-year-old grandma that ended up passing away because of it, and you had no reaction. This is something that has existed long before COVID-19. So I will not allow these weirdos to do this. You do not have the moral high ground to try to force people to get injected, especially when we know it should be null and void anyway, because we already know that people can still get infected with it and pass it in the event that they're vaccinated. So you have no moral high ground anyway. So that's where the buck stops. Gaslighters. You just watched a clip from my podcast, For Canon's Sake. Catch us live at 12 p.m. throughout the week over at youtube.com/YoungRipper59 and follow us over at odyssey.com/@YoungRipper59. If you want to watch the entire video cast after the show is over, just be sure to become a member on the YouTube channel. Of course, the full audio portion of the podcast is available for free on all major digital platforms, or just visit forcanonsake.com.